Charlotte Allen recently wrote an entire column complaining about how atheists complain too much. She described them as boring, unpopular, fixated, and fanatical, among other things, and then, without a hint of irony, she criticized them for pointing out that a lot of people don't like atheists. How about that? There was one part of her insubstantial ramblings that stood out to me. She accused atheists of failing to address the serious arguments of theology, such as how free will can exist if God knows everything, or how God can be considered good when there's so much suffering in the world. Well, theology is an interesting field. Certainly the study of religious traditions throughout history and across cultures and societies is a worthy endeavor. The phenomenon of religion has had a significant impact on humanity, for better or worse, and it's important that we have some understanding of it. In that respect, theology is a valid and useful field of inquiry. But theology goes astray when theologians select one specific religious tradition and decide that this religion is actually an accurate accounting of reality, whereas all the other religions are just myths and stories. At that point, theology becomes something like an anime club whose members have decided that the events depicted in, say, Death Note actually occurred. And when you point out that Death Note is fiction, they accuse you of failing to engage them on a serious level and address their serious arguments about Death Note. And then another anime club shows up and they declare that Naruto is the one true anime. Then another club decides that Ghost in the Shell is real, but they split up when some of them claim that only the first movie actually happened. And the only thing all these people can agree on is that you're the one who's wrong because you think all this fictional anime is fictional. Wouldn't that be an odd situation to find yourself in? But of course, we mustn't forget the serious theological arguments that allegedly explain how God can be good if there's so much suffering, and how we can have free will if God knows everything. This is where the intellectually perverse aspects of theology are brought to the fore, in fields such as apologetics, which is essentially founded upon dishonesty and dedicated to digging up any arguments in support of a predetermined conclusion while ignoring any arguments to the contrary, and theodicy, which devotes itself to rationalizing why a good God could allow the worst kinds of suffering to flourish in this world. Of course, the reason this must be rationalized is because it isn't rational to begin with. Theologians insist on coming up with all sorts of bizarre and lengthy explanations to resolve these clearly contradictory premises, because they refuse to even consider the possibility that their premises are false. They simply cannot bring themselves to acknowledge the obvious, that there is no evidence that any gods exist or ever did, and there's no compelling reason to believe otherwise. Instead, theologians waste their time trying to solve problems that wouldn't even exist if they hadn't been created by theology. And when the rest of us point out that these supposed problems are entirely illusory, apparently we're the ones at fault because we're not addressing these serious arguments. The fact is, there's nothing for us to address. If you insist on trapping yourself within a logical labyrinth of your own devising and trying to find your way out while passing up the most obvious exits, that's your choice. But don't act like the rest of us are in any way obliged to enter your fabricated maze in the first place. Seriously.